All right, joining me is Christy McSweeney, and I've got David Limbrick as well. Great to have you guys. This childcare plan of the government's, I mean, you're going to get subsidised childcare if you're earning under $530,000 a year as a family. Christy, it's pretty generous, isn't it?
It's extraordinarily generous, isn't it? And so what this actually does, it abolishes coalition policy, which was what we call childcare activity test, which means to get the subsidies, you have to be working, studying, training or volunteering. That's going to go now. And so essentially everybody is eligible up to over 500,000. Now, let's just contrast this, will we? When Tony Abbott's paid parental policy, which was capped at salaries of $150,000 for people to be paid 6 months. It was a national outrage. It was too high. It was a disgraceful use of budget. Chris Bowen raged against it at the time. Now, I don't think Australians are going to cop people earning a household income of $530,000 having access to taxpayers' salaries. The other thing the government's done, they're not calling it childcare, they're calling it early learning. And baked into this $1 billion fund is a 15% pay rise for childcare workers. More government spending, propping up the economy as they like to do it.
Well, David, I heard somebody say, you know, middle-class welfare. This is upper-class welfare.
Well, this is exactly middle and upper class welfare. I mean, there's a general principle here that if you're paying tax, it sort of doesn't really make sense that you're also receiving welfare. And I think that's the prime problem here. What we really need to do is get rid of these subsidies altogether and lower tax rates so that people can afford childcare, and deregulate it so that you don't have these crazy expenses involved in obtaining childcare.
Christy, I don't know if this will be a controversial thing to say, but if you're earning, you know, $500,000 a year as a family, shouldn't you be encouraged to stay home and enjoy your kids rather than have the government pay for you to outsource them to someone else?
Look, James, families make decisions that make sense for them as an economic family unit. Childcare is really important policy. It's really important workforce participation policy. It's really important for women to continue working. But $500,000 as a household income is extraordinary. Currently, it's about 80,000 the people that get the almost 90% subsidies. Sure, these subsidies are going to be progressively reduced the higher your income is, but the fact that that's a marker for people to achieve taxpayers' subsidies for childcare is a lot.
It is a lot. Anthony Albanese needs a lot at the moment, I would say, to change his electoral fortunes. I want to move on to the US, where 26-year-old Luigi Maggioni has been arrested in relation to the alleged murder of United Healthcare's CEO Brian Thompson. Now, if the shooting of Thompson in broad daylight wasn't shocking enough, reaction to the murder has been quite unbelievable. Social media has been swamped with people cheering for Thompson's murder and lionising the alleged killer for taking out a supposed billionaire. And the Pennsylvania McDonald's, where the alleged killer was arrested, has been bombarded with negative reviews online. People have called the staff who reported the shooter to police rats and snitches. And to no one's surprise, students at Sydney's top universities have now decided to politicise the assassination. One student wrote, and this has gone viral, "All billionaires are parasites and we need to get rid of them." David, does this not just show exactly what's wrong with the world at the moment? I mean, this response just floors me.
Socialists don't take their masks off very often, but when they do, you get to see that they're basically following an inherently violent ideology. Unlike libertarian ideas, socialism is inherently violent. And this is why these people always need to tell everyone about what good people they are. They wear their badges and pins and constantly virtue signalling. They need to tell people that they're good, because normal people that are good you don't need to tell other people that you're a good person. They're inherently violent, and we need to call this out more often, because it's not just this. There's many other things where they sort of feel more empowered and more emboldened to act in ways that are really violent and destructive, and we need to call it out and put a stop to it.
Yeah, exactly. These same people saying, we need to get rid of all billionaires, kill them, are the same people who also preach tolerance and love and coming together. Christy, if the CEO of the health fund was a black woman, do you think they'd be as excited about the murder?
That's a very interesting point, James. No, I think they would probably find a way to celebrate that in a different way. But this is a disgraceful indictment of what society's become, what young people have become in terms of what's driving the clickbait to continually show these comments that they're making and to give them airtime and to give them a presence so they can grow their movement. The police will tell you that that leads to sparking copycat incidents, and I'm sure there's a lot of CEOs out there running equivalent companies that would be pretty scared around this sort of momentum of that messaging.
I want to ask you, Christy, because you've spoken a lot about the problems we've got with our universities. There's the Socialist Alternative at Sydney University, I think it is, and they've got posters around Newtown at the moment showing the face of the CEO who was murdered in cold blood with the caption, "Abolish the billionaires." I might point out, by the way, that the man who was murdered was not anywhere near a billionaire. But I mean, what do universities do about students who are propagating this sort of stuff? I mean, first it was the pro-Palestinian stuff. Now we're on to get rid of billionaires, and we're cheering for the murder of a father of kids. Yeah, he was wealthy, but I mean, that's not a crime. And I note that the students who are raging against billionaires are using devices that were created by billionaires. What do universities do about students who are saying these sorts of things? Or is this just one of the things that universities have to accept?
Well, universities don't have to accept it, James, because encampments and the blurring of the line in terms of what's appropriate behaviour and what's appropriate public commentary on campus doesn't happen outside G8 universities. Now, to my knowledge, there aren't these issues at James Cook University in Townsville, at Victoria University in Ballarat, at Edith Cowan University in Bunbury. It really is concentrated at our top tier, most expensive, most prestigious universities, particularly Melbourne and Sydney. And what does that say about the standard of what those chancellors were too slow in setting what they would stand for, right from October 7th to this? It's an accumulative effect.
Yeah, great point. Great point. I want to move on to events in the Queensland Parliament where there were pretty emotional scenes as Premier David Crisafulli moved a motion to prevent any changes to the state's Termination of Pregnancy Act. Now, that was a pre-election promise, but his motion bans any debate on abortion for at least the next 4 years. Crisafulli also accused the opposition of a US-style scare campaign during the election. But take a look at what the Premier said yesterday in Parliament.
This motion today ends the disgraceful campaign. Queenslanders said no to a US-style scare campaign. Queenslanders said no to politicising a sensitive issue, and Queenslanders said no to the re-election of a very bad Labor government.
David, I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think? The Premier vowed not to change abortion laws, fair enough, but in order to make sure that they can't be changed, he won't even allow the subject to be discussed. It's pretty anti-democratic, is it not?
It is very anti-democratic, and this is what happens when you have a parliament in Australia that doesn't have an upper house of review. This wouldn't fly in other states that have an upper house. If you tried to do this in Victoria, it wouldn't be possible because the government doesn't control the upper house in most parliaments. But in Queensland, they only have a lower house. Once the government controls it, they can do what they want and they can shut down debate on issues.
Christy, people are saying online, I've been reading the comments, they said, well, he promised not to change anything, so nothing will change, so everything's good. But there's a bigger principle here, isn't there? And that is that if I'm a local member and a constituent says, look, I'm really concerned about this, would you raise it? And I have to say, well, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about that. That's not a situation we should tolerate, surely.
Well, look, James, there's principle and then there's what's smart politics. And David Crisafulli has engaged in really, really smart politics on this. Yes, he voted against the decriminalisation of abortion bill in 2018. He had to wear that around his neck during the election campaign with Labor targeting him. He's also got fringe MPs in his own party who saw fit to drive this to the fore of the election campaign agenda. He said repeatedly there will be no change to abortion laws. And guess what? Labor did target the LNP. They did lose what was anticipated to be a whopping majority. We were looking at 17 seats, then 12, and then they won with 3. They didn't need Robbie Katter. Katter Party has 3 MPs. That was his issue. He drove it and co-opted fringe Christian MPs in the LNP, and it hurt the party, absolutely no question. It needs to be put back in its box. And Labor has voted against this motion. Crisafulli has wedged them good and proper, and sometimes for the greater good.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm just not sure if
I
really
know,
want
James.
smart politicians.
I know,
want principled
I understand,
politicians.
but it's clever.
Do you understand, Christy?
It's a smart move.
I just
If
don't
he
know
didn't do it, it would have hurt Dutton considerably in the federal campaign. We both know that.
Yeah, all right. I don't know. I'm just after over smart politicians. A conviction politician would be a wonderful thing. Christy McSweeney, David Limbrick, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.